Hello, hello.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We will slowly start. If you can take your seats, please. I know. My name is Janice Patashnik. This is my fourth UNEA, you would believe it or not, because I was previously in the position of the Commissioner for Environment from the European Union. Currently, I'm co-chairing the UN International Panel for dealing with resource management. And the theme which we will discuss today, it's really much the theme on which I'm also professionally working. It's actually life cycle approaches, which are of course connected to the products and to the natural resource use. And we have just this week released the Global Resource Outlook for 2019, in which we have analyzed the trends in the last 50 years. We have also looked a bit in what are the environmental regional impacts of that resource use. We have analyzed two scenarios. One is historical trends, which I'm pretty sure you would expect that it's not exactly the one which we would like. And the other one is sustainability trends. Towards sustainability. Also, some policy recommendations were added. Maybe just before, I will absolutely connect that to the life cycle story, maybe just before that we do understand what is actually happening out there in the world. Our global resource use has in the last 50 years more than tripled. And material demand per capita consumption grew from 7.4 to 12.2 tons per capita in those days, which means that it's not only the growth of population, it's actually very much the economic growth which is driving the changes. And we have also seen that material productivity has started to decline around the year 2000. You might be very surprised by that fact on a global level, of course, because material productivity is decreasing in all your countries. How can it be that it's decreasing on a global level? Because we have a structural shift from the countries which are more resource efficient to the countries which are less resource efficient. We have also analyzed, as I mentioned, environmental impacts in the value chain of resource extraction and processing phase, and we found out that 90% of global biodiversity loss and water stress is actually related to resource extraction and processing. Half of climate change impacts are related to that, and 1/3 of pollution health impacts are also related to that. So we haven't analyzed yet the consumption use side. So the car which you actually buy has already caused 1/3 of the pollution, even if you park it for the whole life. Another IRP research conclusion showed in the past that, of course, the trade-offs among sustainable development goals are existing. And the best way to address those trade-offs among various goals is simply to focus on sustainable consumption and production. That's the best way if you want to deal also with the others. And without decoupling of economic growth from the resource use and from environmental impacts, there is no sustainable future. Circular economy concept, it's an instrument which is basically leading to decoupling, leading to sustainable consumption and production. It's actually a concept which also in Europe emerged in environmental sphere, in environmental area, but through the dialogue and through the very in-depth debate, we found out that it should be actually understood more as an economic instrument with very positive environmental and health consequences. Actually, it should be understood as part of the bigger picture of societal and cultural transformation needed to sustain humanity and to put our economic system in line with the Sustainable Development Goals requirements. Too many times we still look to our products through the way how we are handling them, so producer being responsible till the end of production, consumer till the end of use, and society after. How society is then organizing, dealing with the waste, it's of course another question. But that is to a large extent the product, because not everybody in the whole chain actually feels that they are co-responsible for the end story, how the product actually ends. And that's why we have many times also the problems in how we are behaving in production and also in consumption. And that's why consumerism and GDP per capita growth are still very much leading our decisions. Life cycle approaches help us assess the impacts along the life cycle of products, the consecutive and interlinked linkages of stages of a product system from raw material acquisition or generation from natural resources to final disposal. Life cycle approaches provide us also with intelligence on the environmental and social impacts related to production and consumption systems. The intelligence provided by life cycle approaches is relevant, useful, and at reach for private sector as well as the public sector, industrialized as well as emerging and developing economies, large corporations and small and medium-sized enterprises. So, since it is useful, since it makes sustainable consumption and production and circular economy possible and realistic, it's no surprise that it has deserved our attention today. We will have the debate organized in two thematic blocks, where I will be bringing interventions by three in the first and two in the second block of our experts. This will be followed by several ministerial contributions. Ministers and experts will provide insights into who are leading players of applying life cycle approaches in the private and public sector and what have been their benefits individually. In addition, we will also explore the participants are increasing, how the participants are increasing the benefits beyond their own remit. Please keep your intervention short, be specific, go to the point, provoke, and in the first place, think. Ask questions, make this kind of genuine dialogue as much as possible, even if I know that it's quite difficult. Since there are many of us who would like to contribute, maybe even too many, I will have no other option than interrupt if you will be too long. I would like to be polite, respectful to all of you, but I'm sure you would also do your part of allowing also the other speakers, your colleagues, to share their thoughts with us today. The panel, it's really interesting if I start from the left. Her Excellency Inga Ronda King, President of UN ECOSOC. Continuing with Sarah Chandler, Senior Director, Operations and Environmental Initiatives from some company which barely somebody do not know, that's Apple. Then, by the way, maybe you have noticed, we have gender-biased panel, which doesn't happen so oftenly. Then we have Dr. Michael Goethe, Vice President Africa. Then Professor Steffi Helweg, she's from ETH Zurich, Switzerland. She's also my colleague in the International Resource Panel. So if I will call her Steffi, don't misunderstand. And at the end, we have Leila Acharoglu, UN Environment Champion of the Earth. We, by the way, share that title. And the founder of the UN School of Disruptive Design. To move straight forward into the dialogue, setting the scene on life cycle approaches, I will start with Sarah. She will do a short introduction of a company which is familiar to most of you, as I already mentioned, Apple. Can you please provide us, Sarah, with a short overview of the vision, together with your progress, key challenges, partnerships required that could be discussed today? Please.
Good morning, and thank you to the UN Environment for this opportunity. I'm Sarah Chandler. I lead Apple's work in closed-loop supply chains. We're honored to address the distinguished leaders in this assembly because forums like this showcase the power that innovation has to change the world for the better. You asked about life cycle innovation, and we frame that question at Apple as, can we make but not take? Let me explain and walk through our life cycle approach. 2 years ago, Apple announced 2 of our most ambitious goals yet, to make all of our products out of 100% recycled or renewable material, and to manufacture those products at suppliers powered by renewable energy. I'm excited to share we're making great progress. From tin to aluminum to plastics, we have teams working on 11 priority materials. We're now using 100% recycled tin in the main logic board on iPhone. That one change prevents the mining of approximately 10,000 tons of tin ore per year. Our newest MacBook Air has a 100% recycled enclosure. The aluminum is a custom alloy that our metallurgists engineered. And the MacBook Air now has a life cycle carbon footprint 47% lower than the previous generation. Our products are also increasingly built in facilities powered by renewable energy and with zero waste certifications. Apple's own electricity is already 100% renewable, so our offices, retail stores, data centers. But 3/4 of our carbon footprint comes from manufacturing, and the majority of that is in electricity. So 4 years ago, we launched a program to help our suppliers make the same transition to renewable energy that we have. Today, there's nearly 4 gigawatts of clean renewable energy committed or built as a result of that program. That's roughly 1/3 of our manufacturing electricity footprint. Once our products are made, we want them to be used for a long time. We run our own labs where products go through rigorous testing before they leave our doors. We're rougher on them than you are. And our support continues through the product's life cycle with regular software updates to keep devices current and a network of authorized repair professionals to service them if necessary. When a product has reached the end of its long life, the last step in closing the life cycle loop is recovering the materials so that they can be reused. And we're innovating there as well. Customers can trade in or recycle their devices for credit at any Apple store or online worldwide. Eligible devices go on to a new owner. That way, we make sure devices are used for as long as possible, and at end of life, recycle them through technologies like Daisy, our iPhone disassembly robot. Daisy takes apart end-of-life products so that we can send separated components to specialty recyclers around the world. It's kind of like a giant matching exercise. Logic boards go to smelters that can recover tin and precious metals. Aluminum stays at its highest purity. We're even able to recover materials like tungsten and rare earths, which are lost in traditional e-waste recycling. So we're learning a lot, and there is a lot that's possible and a lot that is encouraging, and it's incredibly exciting. But to be honest, the journey is harder than it should be. The simple truth is we can't do this alone. We need scale in order to make a circular model viable, and this requires partnership and policy change. Let me share an example. Today, from a logistics and regulatory perspective, it can be easier to mine virgin bauxite, smelt it, and turn it into aluminum than it is to recycle already fabricated aluminum at purity. So think about that for a second. It means it's easier to extract a rock containing 15% bauxite from the earth, ship it for smelting, than it is to ship an iPhone housing with 95% aluminum back into our supply chain. We need a sea change to enable efficient, economic, and safe material recovery that puts circular economy and circular supply chains on equal footing. We need a system that surpasses the environmental protections we have today. So I think we have a unique opportunity, an opportunity to harmonize our shared ambition and thinking on circularity with safeguards required for moving e-waste. Can you imagine a world where innovation brought to recycling and recovery pushes us to new frontiers of economic prosperity, environmental stewardship, and responsible manufacturing? Can you imagine a reinvention of supply chains to not only solve challenges of e-waste, but to enable materials and products of the future? Together, leveraging our respective strengths, this is possible. With your help, this is possible. Together, we can work to find ways to enable this future with techniques that are safe for people and the planet and that create economic prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Very good start. The other speakers from the panel have up to 4 minutes. That's where I would like that we stick to. And I will continue with the question to Steffi. Steffi, how do life cycle approaches contribute to resources, energy, chemicals, waste management, which we try to address by this session, and who it's actually already benefiting?
Okay. So life cycle approaches, the benefits of those are that they help us understand the environmental consequences of human actions, and that includes resource management, waste management, chemical and energy management, and to do that in a comprehensive manner, which means that we try to look at the whole life cycle and the different impacts. And the reason is that we want to have a comprehensive assessment as a decision basis to support environmental decision making. It helps us to understand hotspots, environmental hotspots, and therefore to set priorities to where they belong. And it also helps us to choose between different alternatives. So we can assess different alternatives, for example, policy actions, and then see which one is actually preferable from an environmental point of view. And I think that is very helpful in the context that you mentioned. It's also good to recognize trade-offs, because we look at different impact categories. We can kind of see, when we do one or the other thing, what kind of problem shifting are we potentially inducing? That is important, for example, for chemicals. As we have seen in the past, very often a chemical is banned, but then the substitute chemical was only assessed for the initial problem of the first chemical, and it came with other problems which hadn't been on the agenda. So it is very important to do a kind of all-encompassing assessment right from the beginning. So who are the actors? I think we have industry representatives here. I don't need to elaborate on that. Consumers can benefit. For example, you can do life cycle assessments on consumer lifestyles and learn a little bit about what is your impact of consumption. Policymakers definitely can benefit a lot. And I will elaborate a lot within the 4 minutes, I hope, so that because it's most relevant for you. So one of the examples was already mentioned by Janice in the Global Resource Outlook. We try to apply life cycle assessment to analyze the impacts of global material flows and the importance of resources, and hopefully that will induce some action. Another example, the earliest actually which comes to my mind, is a regulation which was induced in Switzerland 10 years ago, and which actually was very good, as we see now afterwards. So that is the Biofuel Life Cycle Assessment Ordinance. Before that, the Swiss government had done a complete life cycle assessment on all the different types of biofuels which were available at the time. And that enabled them to understand at a very early stage that biofuels do not only save greenhouse gases, and some didn't, by the way, but that they also, some of them, have negative side consequences, such as, for example, land use change, biodiversity loss, water scarcity, toxicity. Today we all know that. But at that time, still many governments didn't, and they set ambitious targets for using biofuels. And in Switzerland, actually, that wasn't the case. They attached tax exemptions to the outcome of an LCA. So if you wanted to import or use a biofuel, you kind of had to demonstrate with an LCA that it was better than the best fossil alternative. So it can help to direct policy in a direction which is useful and which actually fulfills the goal. And I think the biggest application that I see now is in the circular economy field. Circular economy is what we need. We need disruptive change. We all know that. The vision is great. Industry is enthusiastic, so all of it is wonderful. The problem is sometimes that when you see the examples, the circular solutions which are proposed, you can tell that they are not always very relevant, and sometimes they're even counterproductive. So for example, the other day I was talking to a company and they wanted to remanufacture fossil oil heatings, which doesn't make sense at all, because you save some materials, but you keep an outdated and inefficient system in the lifetime. You prolong the lifetime and keep it in the market for longer than it actually should. So the environmental costs would have been much larger than the environmental gains. And the LCA can tell you that sort of information. I think it's beyond even only assessing case studies. I think it would be very good to include also environmental indicators as performance indicators, maybe targets for the circular economy, just to steer it in the right direction. Because what we have right now, it's mainly mass indicators, for example, recycling rates. I know circular economy is not only about recycling, but that neglects then the quality of recycling, and we know that we have a problem there. That makes an environmental difference. And if you would include comprehensive environmental indicators, you would also force people to have transparent supply chains, downstream supply chains included. So you would also have to look at the recycling process in that example and would have to see what kind of new products are substituted. I think I need to come to an end. I just want to summarize. So I think what LCA can do is it can shift away policies from more, let's say, partial information-based policies, or maybe sometimes even gut feeling-based policies, towards well-informed policies. And that can help to make them more effective, and I think that's what we need.
Thank you, Steffi. Michael, you are coming from BASF. What are the lessons learned from life cycle analysis which you have applied? Have you experienced also some benefits you can report to us?
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for having me here on the panel and the ability or possibility to contribute to the discussion. Yeah, I'm representing BASF, the world's leading chemical company, and I'm heading here the African operations. We have a very holistic approach to sustainability, looking from sourcing, we source responsibly, to production, to produce efficiently and safely, and then also at the end with our products to provide sustainable solutions to our customers. So we really contribute over the entire value chain. And it's very much enforced in our recently renewed strategy, and it's also part of our company, our corporate purpose. We create chemistry for a sustainable future. The topic I would like to refer today to is circular economy. So we are currently approaching circular economy by chemical recycling of plastics, which is in fact converting plastic waste by thermochemical methods into a valuable feedstock for our chemical processes again. And that overcomes the problem we are currently seeing with mechanical recycling, where we see limitations of the use. Basically, what we prepare or produce through chemical recycling is a fully new, fresh feedstock, which can be then used for all sorts of chemicals again. To close, by closing this loop, we basically have three benefits. We would, on first hand, reduce plastic waste by converting it into a chemical feedstock. Secondly, as we are currently sourcing primarily fossil sources or feedstock, we would reduce the CO2 emission, for our own production. And thirdly, and that's, I think, a very important point, and you elaborated on this in your introductory remarks, is we are creating value for plastic waste, which is currently not existing. And by creating a value to plastic waste, we can then ensure that basically everybody in the value chain is participating appropriately. Currently, we are establishing a recycling hub in Lagos, yeah, where we want to collect feedstock for these ChemCycling processes. And we will make sure that all the waste pickers, and I saw very interesting panels 2 days ago with the South African Waste Pickers Association, that they participate in the value we create. And I think through this ChemCycling concept, that will be possible. We are currently in the process of developing this technology and scaling it up, but we also need regulatory support. Currently, chemical recycling, or how we call it ChemCycling, is not considered as an accepted recycling method for plastic, so we need to have the government bodies to accept chemical recycling. And secondly is we will not be able immediately to replace all fossil feedstock as raw material. So what we need to have an acceptance of a mass balance methodology where we basically, if we add 10% of our feedstock coming from recycled materials, that we can claim that also 10% of the products generated out of it will be recycled material. So that's basically where we need support from the government. I think that can be a technology which will significantly change plastic waste. But we need to have industry partners, technology partners, and certainly then also favorable regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Very good. Fair, yes. Now we are coming to the second part, which actually the minister's interventions for this block. There are a few questions, general questions, which I would like to ask to all of you, and you can, of course, more focus on one or another. What are your country's priorities from a life cycle perspective? Why do you decide to focus on this, and how do you plan to tackle them? What challenges do you expect to have to overcome? What will leadership in life cycle approaches mean for you? And what are your expectations from UN Environment and other stakeholders in this endeavor? So it's pretty broadly, because we would simply like to understand where you are heading, what are you doing, where do you see the benefits? And I will, unfortunately, as you know, we don't have a lot of time, so I would like to ask you to stick to agreed 2 minutes. And I will start with Her Excellency, the Minister from Uruguay. Yes, please.
Buenos días, voy a hablar en español, si ustedes me permiten. Uruguay tiene importantes logros en energías renovables, control de químicos y de recursos de la producción. Me voy a referir a dos iniciativas importantes. El proyecto de ley de gestión integral de residuos minimiza su generación y promueve la valorización y los modelos de desarrollo sostenible y de negocios que generan empleos. La norma propuesta conjuga la inclusión social, laboral y productiva de clasificadores a través de la creación de empleos dignos en la gestión de residuos. Las acciones se basan en promover un modelo de desarrollo sostenible, ordenar y controlar la cadena de reciclado, promocionando el desarrollo social y laboral de los clasificadores de residuos y su efectiva inclusión social. Apoyar el desarrollo de empresas de servicios en forma de cooperativas y otras formas de asociación autogestionadas, así como asistir a su capacitación y desarrollo, especialmente en los casos de jefas de hogar. La Ley de Uso Sustentable de Bolsas Plásticas tiene el objetivo de prevenir y mitigar el impacto ambiental derivado de su utilización. Entre los desafíos más importantes se encuentra el necesario cambio cultural y las modalidades de producción de bolsas, y se exige una certificación de materiales y trámites de control. Entre las acciones propuestas se encuentran definir materiales y tipos de bolsas permitidos, establecer la prohibición de circulación de bolsas que no sean compostables o biodegradables, requerir la certificación obligatoria, controlar fabricantes e importadores y establecer planes de reconversión para la industria nacional. Estas iniciativas legales promueven prácticas de producción y consumo sostenibles esenciales para el desarrollo nacional, junto con otras acciones para el beneficio de nuestros ciudadanos más vulnerables. En este sentido, reconocemos la importancia del informe Global Outlook de Químicos y Desechos que habrá de ser discutido el mes próximo en Montevideo. Es fundamental que tomemos acciones decididas para consolidar metas para la agenda post-2020. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Madam Minister. Now I would like to call His Excellency from Canada, please.
Thank you. I'll start. You give us a few minutes, so I'll try to be brief and try to answer your question. And I'll focus on a few things. In Canada, we recognize a systemic approach that is needed to transform the economy to one that decouples the negative impact of natural resource use and waste generation from economic growth. And sustainable pattern of consumption and production are at the heart of the current crisis we're facing and biodiversity loss. In a circular approach, it is important to introduce measures along the entire value chain of product, from design to end life, and refer to colleagues from Apple. It was very point well taken on regulation, and target all stakeholders, from brand owners, consumers, distribution, cities. But I want to focus on one aspect, and you ask us to pick one, and I'll pick plastic. We've taken in Canada efforts in advancing circular economy, and we started with plastic. In Canada, less than 11% of plastic are recycled today. Our domestic strategy, with the rest on a circular approach to management of plastics, aim to keep the value of plastic in the economy and prevent plastic pollution. Canada is aiming its efforts along the plastic value chain and will introduce measures to address design, use, collection, and recycling of plastic projects. Last year in 2018, we had the G7 presidency, and we exercised a strong advocacy for the development of a more resource-efficient and sustainable approach to the management of plastic to protect our oceans and coastal community. This led to the development of an Ocean Plastic Charter. We had an event earlier this week, which was highly successful, and key accomplishments continue to grow in membership. Canada has seen our new members, and on Monday we had 2 new members, and we're very pleased with that. The Government of Canada is working with provinces, territories, municipalities, industries, civil society, consumers toward a vision of zero plastic waste. The intent is to support implementation of the Charter, cultivate broad federal, provincial, and territorial supports, keep plastic in the economy and out of landfill, the environment, and the stomach of our creatures that are living along our coast. We will continue to have a long-term transition, and that will be part of our transition to circular economy. Finally, a few stats about what we do in Canada and the kind of investment we're looking at. 20 million Canadian dollars for innovation to beat plastic pollution in developing countries, so this is not just a Canadian issue. 12 million Made in Canada innovative approach. 6 million innovative public-private partnerships through the World Economic Forum, and action on plastic waste. Very last point, we're looking forward to the 2020 World Circular Economy Forum, where we aim to promote and advance a global conversation on life cycle approach and sustainable consumption and production, including approach to plastic pollution. This includes widening supports and implementation of the Charter. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you. The next speaker on the list is the person which I know quite well, the Minister from Finland. Kimmo, please.
Thank you, Janice, and thank you for the excellent examples we heard from some companies that what you have doing with the life cycle approach. I would like to widen the scope to one specific sector, and that is building and construction, because built environment is the biggest consumer of natural resources and energy globally. And when we think building sector and the life cycle, at the moment in very many countries we are just starting to focus on energy efficiency, improve insulation, triple or double glasses, and capturing the energy from the air conditioning and so on and so on. But that's very first step. Then we need to think, how do we produce the heat for our buildings with fossil fuels or renewables, or how do we produce the electricity consumed in air conditioning, cooling the buildings? Is it from fossil fuels or renewables? Next step is thinking the production of materials. What kind of CO2 footprint the materials have? Cement, concrete, huge emissions, steel, glass. Timber is a good choice because it serves as a carbon storage for decades, all wooden components. But then also the building technologies. How do we build? Pre-manufacturing reduces CO2 emissions and air pollutants on the building side. That's good. And then we can go further and further. How much we can use recycled materials in buildings. So there is a very long chain to go forward at this, and we have started this kind of approach in Finland, and trying to build regulation that is based on life cycle CO2 footprint after a couple of years. And we are piloting that. And besides of that, we are creating criteria for public procurement, so how much recycled or renewable material is used when you build something. So I would like to raise this because I think that the built environment is a huge user or consumer of materials and energy, and if we are going to solve the world's problems, we have to do that in growing cities. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimo. Next one on my list is His Excellency Vice Minister from Japan for Global Environmental Affairs, please.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I would like to speak briefly about our recent development concerning the life cycle approach. Our life cycle approach is very effective as we move ahead with establishing a sound material recycle society, increasing resource efficiency and promoting sound waste management. Government should put priority on mainstreaming the life cycle approach in the policy-making process. Last October, Japan revised its fundamental plan for establishing a sound material recycle society, which is a plan for the entire government. The revised plan sets out a future vision which aims to achieve thorough recycling of resources throughout the life cycle of goods and services by providing the necessary goods and services to the people who need them at the required time and in just the right amount. In addition to mainstreaming a life cycle approach in the policy-making process, it is also crucial to set indicators to measure the progress of actions. The revised plan employs indicators on doubling resource productivity by year 2025 from 2000, and on improving cyclical use rate per waste and category for plastic waste, biomass, metals, and non-metallic minerals. In addition to action at each stage of the life cycle, including use, distribution, production, resource securing, and disposal, we need to optimize the overall life cycle through green procurement as well as appropriate information sharing among stakeholders related to resource circulation. Strategies tailor-made for specific material are also important. In this context, for plastics, Japan's Central Environment Council is currently examining a draft strategy on plastic resource circulation based on a life cycle approach that includes milestones as milestones of 25% reduction for single-use plastics and a 60% recycling rate for plastic packaging and containers. This June, Japan will host the G20 ministerial meeting on environment and energy. Ministers are expected to discuss resource efficiency, including the marine plastic litter issue, at the upcoming meeting, and as such, Japan will be leading to the way for an innovation and life cycle approach worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next one on my list is His Excellency Ambassador from Montenegro. Izvolite.
Thank you very much, Mr. Patashnik. Hvala veliko. Nice to see you as our close friend and supporter of Montenegrins on Montenegrin's road to better environment also. On your questions, I would like to mention, if I can, preparing this precisely, two touch. First, Montenegro has expressed its commitments to the ministerial declaration of the fourth session of UNEA and the associated successive processes that this document will impose towards a healthier and innovative solution for a pollution-free future of our planet. In our view, the action envisioned in the focus area of the ministerial declaration may significantly contribute towards addressing the following priority needs of Montenegro, which are also identical to those widely evident in the different global and regional contexts that exist. Overcoming environmental and health challenges through fostering sustainable and efficient resource management, application of the integrated life cycle approach to achieve resource efficiency in key economic sectors, as well as a low-carbon economy, along with the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by 30% by 2030 compared to the 1990 baseline. Halt the degradation of renewable natural resources, biodiversity, water, air, and soil, whilst enabling efficient natural resource management as well as resource-efficient use of metallic and non-metallic resources. Promotion of innovation in chemical management to protect human health and the environment from the harmful effects of chemicals and waste. Development of policies for sound waste management, including a commitment to ambitious national targets by 2025 for reducing waste generation and phasing out single-use plastic products. Innovative solutions to support circular economy modalities for the prevention, reduction and recycling of waste, as well as the reusing of products. Improvement of environmental monitoring system and technologies, and investing in environmental research, education and awareness raising in the framework of sustainable development. To adequately responses, as a second to the previously mentioned priority needs, may have significant positive impact on our national economies, which are still characterized by an inefficient use of resources, especially of energy and water, while only an insignificant portion of generated waste is being recycled or reused. By analyzing different scenarios for resource productivity, it was found in Montenegro that a reduction of resource consumption of 20% by 2020 compared to the average level in the period 2005-2012 is the optimal model for improving resource productivity. This reduction must be primarily achieved in the sectors of energy, civil engineering, tourism, industry, land management and urbanization. Those sectors are the priority ones for decoupling economic growth from natural resource consumption and achieving its divergence from the pollution of the environment. To that end, the national strategy for sustainable development to 2030 in Montenegro is structured around these strategic goals and measures that ensure the transposition of related SDGs. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your contribution. Now, I would like to invite Her Excellency, the Minister from Sweden, please.
Thank you, Janos, and nice to see you again. Well, first of all, we think it's splendid that the ministerial declaration is mentioning chemicals and waste, the waste cluster, as very important. And we see this really as the core to achieving many of the SDGs in Agenda 2030 on health, on oceans, on biodiversity, on decent jobs, etc., etc. So that's excellent. I could talk forever because Sweden has, since a very long time, focused a lot on recycling, circular economy, bioeconomy, and that is still a priority for us. And step by step, we're trying to raise ambitions. One, I'd like to mention two things. One, that we recently introduced a tax cut on repairs, because today it's very often more cheap to throw away what you have and buy something that is new rather than repairing it, and in that way saving resources. So we introduced a tax cut on repairs on household appliances such as refrigerators and such, and textiles and shoes and so on. And I think this is important signal that we want to see a longer life cycle of the products that are on the market. So that was one thing. The other thing that I wanted to mention is the chemicals and how we are treating them globally. Although we try to minimize the use or the introduction of hazardous substances in Sweden by many ways, we see that with the global trade we need to work internationally on this issue. And we, together with Uruguay, have taken the initiative to have a global enabling framework on chemicals to start after 2020, because we know that we're not going to reach the goals that we set out for ourselves to reduce and minimize the use of hazardous substances and chemicals by 2020, and the existing tools are not sufficient. We know that today, one worker dies every 30 seconds from exposure to toxic chemicals. The pollution on this planet has never been worse. A lot of it is also connected to plastics, and the spread of plastic and marine litter has already been mentioned. So it's urgent to act on this. And me and my fellow minister from Uruguay, we're really encouraging everyone to join the High Ambition Alliance for a framework for chemicals, and we're going to make a ministerial declaration later on today in plenary on that purpose. So thank you.
Thank you a lot. Unfortunately, the 2 minutes are not long, and I have, unfortunately, the responsibility to try to bring this to a efficient end. I don't see nobody from Salmon Islands. That's why I would immediately like to ask Your Excellency, the Minister from Italy, please.
Thank you. I'll speak in Italian, please. Beh, grazie, gli stimoli sono stati molti. Voglio dire subito una cosa che riguarda il nuovo governo italiano. Da quando l'estate scorsa il nuovo governo italiano si è insediato, il mese dopo già abbiamo costituito una competenza per l'economia circolare presso il Ministero dell'Ambiente. Notate, non presso il Ministero dell'Economia, ma presso il Ministero dell'Ambiente, poiché noi crediamo molto che economia circolare e ambiente debbano camminare assieme. In questo senso, quindi, già con le prime norme abbiamo inteso, per esempio, inserire degli obblighi presso coloro che fanno gli appalti pubblici in Italia per dei criteri ambientali minimi, che vuol dire che bisogna applicare concretamente negli appalti pubblici italiani l'economia circolare, un mercato che abbiamo stimato in Italia vale 8 miliardi di euro su base annuale, e quindi portare con noi il sistema pubblico e il sistema privato per il medesimo fine: riuso, reimpiego, riciclo. Oggi questo già è un obbligo in Italia. Oggi è una facoltà, perché preferiamo favorire il mercato orientandolo, ed è già legge dello Stato italiano, la possibilità di ridurre gli imballaggi, in particolare quelli di plastica, e favorire il biodegradabile. Garantiamo un ritorno economico alle aziende che lo fanno del 36% sulle spese sostenute. Vedete, c'è tutto un sistema e abbiamo pianificato, per esempio, l'uscita dal sistema dei rifiuti di 55 milioni di tonnellate all'anno di rifiuti che trasformeremo, già ho firmato i decreti, in materie prime seconde, altro elemento concreto di economia circolare, in modo tale da aprire il mercato anche del mondo privato con l'azione pubblica. Come vedete, e chiudo, c'è tutto un sistema che stiamo costruendo e ci piace molto, e qua lo voglio dire. La logica, la risoluzione sull'economia circolare di UNEA 2019 ci soddisfa, meno ci soddisfa invece la risoluzione sul marine litter da questa UNEA 2019. Per tale motivo l'Italia ospiterà nel dicembre di quest'anno, nell'ambito della Convenzione di Barcellona, la COP21 sul Mar Mediterraneo, e stiamo negoziando con tutti i paesi che si affacciano sul Mar Mediterraneo, immaginate i paesi europei, i paesi del Nord Africa, i paesi del Medio Oriente, stiamo negoziando come uno dei primi elementi di parlare di plastic free nei nostri mari. Noi vogliamo che, se non siamo rimasti soddisfatti a livello di UNEA 2019, ma almeno nel Mar Mediterraneo tutti i paesi che si affacciano sul Mar Mediterraneo guardino ad un mare senza plastica. Su questo abbiamo una legge che tra 2 settimane l'Italia produrrà, si chiama Salvamare. Vedete, è un insieme, è un percorso che, voglio chiarire e chiudo, ci allinea perfettamente con l'Unione Europea, con il pacchetto dell'economia circolare dell'Unione Europea, perché come Stato membro noi vogliamo acquisire una leadership ambientale nell'Unione Europea, ma sapendo che l'Unione Europea è molto vicina alla tutela dell'ambiente e siamo perfettamente coesi in questo senso. Grazie.
I'm not, yeah, back. Thank you. Since I don't see the representative of Mongolia, we are wrapping up the first part of the session. Unfortunately, there will be little, because I have to catch the time, there will be little time for responses. But I would immediately shift to Your Excellency. You hold a really important position, the President of the ECOSOC. And how do you see how the life cycle approaches can be further scaled up in the reviews of the SDGs, in particular 8 and 13, in particular in the context of what will be discussed this year in the high-level political forum later on in New York?
Thank you for having me.
Are you probably take this down?
Well, there we are.
Yeah.
Yes, well, thank you for having me. And what I would like to do, though, is to give my views on how these discussions will feed into the HLPF. And I'll give you some examples based on your question. The process of follow-up and review of the 2030 Agenda involves several layers of preparations and reviews at the national, regional, and global levels, culminating at the high-level political forum, where countries and other stakeholders come together to carry out thematic reviews on the theme of the HLPF, reviews of implementation of specific SDGs, and voluntary national reviews. The forum thus provides a powerful feedback mechanism with high potential for multiplier effects on countries' national implementation strategies by providing the space for countries to share knowledge and then bring lessons learned, experiences and solutions back to their countries, try them out and adapt them to their own situations in their efforts to implement their national policies and plans. The results can then be fed back into the virtuous cycle through the country's VNR presentations at the HLPF, where the best practices will once again be shared for other countries' benefit. So while pursuing a life cycle approach, we must also be mindful of the interlinkages among SDGs. When we have sustainability-based decision-making, interlinkages are intrinsically taken into account and integration is done by default. If we focus on the synergies between the goals, we can identify the policies and measures that will have cross-cutting multiplier effects across the goals. In addition, importantly, if we understand and address the trade-offs between goals, we can ensure that our policies do not push for the advancement of one goal to the detriment of another. The review of SDG 8 on decent work and economic growth and SDG 13, say, on climate change, on climate action, under review this year, are of particular importance for the topic of our discussion here today. Target 8.4 of particular importance is of particular importance because it intends to increase efforts to decouple economic growth from resource consumption and environmental degradation through the efficient use of resources by minimizing pollution, with developed countries taking the lead. Climate change, of course, has an impact on all SDGs. No SDG can be achieved if we let climate change endanger our planet and future generations. And vice versa, advances on all other SDGs, from poverty eradication to gender equality, sustainable consumption and production patterns, or sustainable terrestrial ecosystems, will contribute to halting climate change. So if we are able to rethink the way we consume and produce in light of sustainability criteria, taking into consideration all its dimensions, major opportunities will arise for job creation and skills development, improvements in job quality and incomes, as well as advances in equity and social inclusion. These benefits are nevertheless not automatic. Rather, they are contingent on the right actions and policies being implemented. The life cycle approach, therefore, is an important part of the solutions we need to implement. This is where the HLPF comes in. Preparations for reviews are well underway. Your contributions are welcome, well, very welcome, actually, and these discussions will help inform the HLPF and influence collaboration and programs going forward. I'm confident that the HLPF will produce new thinking and renewed commitment on advancing the life cycle approaches to achieve sustainable development and combat climate change. So I thank you for your attention.
Thank you a lot. Leila, your turn.
Great.
How to ensure public awareness campaign focus on those sections that really drive most impact.
Great, thanks for having me. Let me just challenge the perspective on LCA, or life cycle assessment, to you guys here today. So there's a macro and a micro perspective on how we can use life cycle thinking and life cycle assessment to change the way we produce all of our goods and services so that we can achieve the shared goal of a future that works better than today for all of us. First of all, on the macro level, we have life cycle assessment, the data that shows us exactly how activities in the economy affect the natural environment. In fact, it's the only tool that we have to internalize in some way the externalities that our current economic system has created. It is one of the most powerful scientific tools that we have to know every single good and service that exists, from the chairs you're sitting on to the cell phones that we use in our daily lives. There is no other tool that gives us that insight. And that helps us to then feed into the way in which we design policy and also everyday goods and services. But how do we make this accessible and liberalize this thinking so that it isn't just locked up in the minds of all the brilliant scientists who work on this? And that is through life cycle thinking. And life cycle thinking is a tool that anybody can use to understand how the goods and services that fill our lives have secret stories of how they came to be. Nearly everything that we create requires nature. It requires extraction of raw materials, the processing of those materials into usable goods, the transportation and packaging of them, the use and then the end of life. What you may not know is stuff like if you are wearing jeans. I don't think many people in this room are actually wearing jeans, but studies done by one of the major retailers and producers of that product show that the environmental impact is really contributing in the use phase, which helps then create campaigns and activities to change the way people interact with their everyday consumer goods. The same can be said of the bag debate with regards to plastic or paper bags. We know from years of studies in this space, it's not about the material, it's about the functional unit. It's about what we are trying to achieve in society. And so when we look at life cycle thinking as a tool for policy and decision making, we are empowered to understand the secret lives of the things that fill our lives. And that helps us not make unintended consequences and to shift the burden of environmental impact from one thing to the other. Because certainly what we know right now is that the global waste crisis that we deal with, from plastic through to electronics, is not going to be solved by recycling. It's going to be solved by design. So unless we redesign the goods and services that fill our lives, we will just keep having the same problems over and over again. Thank you.
Thank you. I have heard you saying that some time ago, which I remember quite well. We have designed our problems in, we have designed our problems out, something like that.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yes. We design the world and the world designs us.
Yes, exactly.
So it's our fault and our opportunity.
Yeah.
And LCA is the tool to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now we are going to the second round, I would like, if you can, a bit, of course, the questions still stay on the table, but there is one question which is in particular interesting. What is the amount of life cycle information resources already existing? For example, you have got Global Resource Outlook. We have various kind of SCP HAT tool, for example, and something like that. What else is needed to scale up the application of life cycle approaches to ensure that we reach the SDGs faster and more efficiently? Daniel, my good friend from the European Commission.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you very much, Janice. And I am very encouraged by all the examples that we have been listened from the private sector, but also of all the many initiatives that countries are doing. At EU level, 3 years ago, we launched our Circular Economy Action Plan, 54 measures covering many different areas, from production to consumption, waste, but also specific sectors. Plastics, construction, biomass. And I think what is very interesting of this plan, which is now fully presented by the Commission, in many cases adopted and in other cases under discussion, is that it's a comprehensive set of measures dealing with regulation, dealing with innovation, dealing with standards, dealing with best practices, and affecting all the companies, whether they are big or small, but also producers, consumers. Your question was, how can we maximize, and what is the information linked to the life cycle assessment? And life cycle is crucial to have a circular economy approach, because we need to look at the whole economic system, from the extraction of the raw materials until the moment when products become waste or get back into the product cycle. And there are two very important issues dealing with life cycle. First of all, life cycle assessment allows us, as it has been said, to look at a wide range of environmental impacts, from resource use to climate change, from toxicity to particulate matters. And it helps to avoid that we improve the performance on one of them to the expense of the other. This information is essential for the companies, for policymakers, and for the investors. But life cycle assessment, and this is the second point, is also a tool that generates valuable information on environmental performance. And thanks to life cycle assessment, businesses and consumers can have the right information to take the environmentally best purchasing decisions. We know in Europe that products that bear sustainability information grow faster than the others. by average 7% annually, compared to 1% for other products. What are we doing in the EU to promote more life cycle assessment? We have to get into what we call product policy. We have developed, in agreement with industry in 27 sectors, what we call the product environmental footprint methods. Agreed methodology with industry to indicate the impact on the environment of these products. We have worked for 4 years with more than 260 committed volunteering companies and stakeholders, and we have succeeded in establishing for 27 different sectors agreed methodology. We need now to share this methodology and to decide at political level whether we put it as a regulation, whether it's a standard, whether it's a recommendation, but the information is there. There are free and simple calculation tools, and in many cases we can have a 90% cost reduction compared to the costs before the PEF, the product environmental footprint, exists. There are other tools like eco-design, energy labeling. All this goes in the same direction, and I think we will need in the next few years to continue working very closely with the private sector to deepen better, to refine this methodology, and to establish what is the best way to make it applicable, not only in Europe, but beyond, because this is a global issue.
Thank you very much. I would now like to ask His Excellency Vice Minister from Netherlands, please.
Thank you very much, Janos. And let me start by actually echoing a point you made earlier on the importance of monitoring and data when it comes to resource efficiency. I think that is very important, and the UN environment can play a very important role in that. And I'm saying this because, for example, my government has put quite an ambitious target when it comes to resource efficiency. Our coalition agreement, the coalition agreement of our government actually includes a target of 50% raw material reduction in 2030 and a full circular economy in 2050. And that is a difficult journey because we will need very ambitious and very bold measures to reach that. Sharing experience, I think, is very important, preventing to ensuring that we don't reinvent the wheel and share experiences in platforms like this, I think, is very important for each and every one of us in reaching the goals we have set. Time is short, so I would like to only make one specific point, and this is on the importance of including circularity in public procurement. In countries like mine, 15 to 20% of GDP public procurement is equal to 15 to 20% of GDP. That is really serious, and by ensuring that in the government's public procurement activities, circularity is included, I think we can make a very important difference, because it will lead, of course, to reduced resource use with environmental benefits as a result, but also to a reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. So what I would like to take this opportunity is to propose and share with you that I think it could be a very, very good way to lead as governments, to have effect, to stimulate circularity, and let's use a platform like this to share our experiences in the road to really effectively including circular economy in public procurement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. I would now like to give the floor to His Excellency the Minister from Seychelles.
Thank you very much. Every time before I start, I like to point out that I'm from Seychelles, a very small island country in the middle of the Indian Ocean. And I like to think when I intervene, well, more or less on behalf of the small countries and the small islands. In fact, the life cycle approach is an interesting debate for countries like the Seychelles, small islands, small countries. And as you know, we are very far from all the producing centers and also very far from all the recycling centers in the world. And I very much like the intervention from the lady from Apple. And I wish more companies, especially tech companies, would follow a similar approach. I'm sure others do, but I hope more would follow. For us, we look at it in two ways. One is the durability and the ability for products to be recycled after the lifetime. So for us, smaller countries, because it's more difficult for us to have access to new products every time it comes out, so it's good to have durable products. And also because we are very limited in space, it's very difficult for us to dispose of, for example, electronic waste and other types of waste. So we would like to have more durable but recyclable products after. But with the recycling, now comes my other point. With the recycling, we will have to have the opportunity to be able to export the products that are going to be recycled. And from this, we would want to see more producer responsibility, producer-importer responsibility, where we have take-back schemes, where smaller countries can actually find it easier to take back goods to other countries where the recycling companies are for the recycling. So I think the life cycle approach for smaller countries is an interesting one, and it's one, especially from a waste management perspective, and it's one which can perhaps solve, to a certain extent, our waste problems in our countries. I will leave it at that here, and probably have some more intervention after. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I would now like to give the floor to Her Excellency, the Ambassador of the United States.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you to all the organizers for this important meeting. It has been inspiring to hear this morning from speakers taking such diverse and innovative approaches to the issue of resource efficiency. In this period of rapid environmental change and technological advancement, it is clear that private sector and civil society stakeholders are critical components of the solutions to our most pressing environmental issues. And thank you for mentioning Apple. I was especially proud to hear from Apple, a U.S. company at the forefront of innovative solutions to a wide range of global issues. The United States has long been a leader in resource efficiency, both domestically and internationally, and we partner with stakeholders to draw on leading-edge innovations and more effectively advance these issues. I will mention very quickly two issues to illustrate this. The U.S. approach to resource efficiency is sustainable materials management, a systematic approach to using and reusing materials more productively throughout their life cycles, reducing environmental impacts, conserving resources, and reducing costs. The U.S. recycling industry, for example, provides more than 757,000 jobs and $6.7 billion annually in tax revenues. Yet, materials worth $9 billion are thrown away each year. And so we actively engage with industry, government, and nonprofit leaders to enhance our recycling infrastructure, create new markets for recycled materials, and improve public education regarding recycling. The United States is also championing efforts to reduce food waste, a concrete and achievable goal that has a range of positive environmental and social benefits. We challenged U.S. companies to reduce food waste through our Food Recovery Challenge and the 2030 Champions to Reduce Food Loss and Waste. Internationally, we've been very active on resource efficiency issues through UNEP, OECD, G7, and among others, and we serve on the steering committee of the Global Lifecycle Assessment Data Network, which aims to achieve better accessibility and interoperability of life cycle assessment data. We co-sponsored here at UNEA this year a side event on food waste, and we hope that many of you were able to attend. Finally, we have an ongoing collaboration with the Commission for Environmental Cooperation, a partnership among Mexico, Canada, and the United States that supports food measurement efforts and provide resources to inspire youth in particular to take action to reduce food waste. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Very nice overview, and thank you also for the support in those activities. Now I would like to invite His Excellency the Minister from Greece, please.
Thank you for the opportunity and the invitation. For Greece, circular economy is a unique opportunity because exiting the crisis, we need to restructure the economy. So we need this restructuring to be without negative social impacts and to have a fair society. That's why we approved the growth strategy, where the circular economy is a special chapter approved at the high level of Ministerial Council. And in this level, we decide to remove all the administrative barriers for secondary materials and to implement pay-as-you-throw and landfill tax to all our activities. But also in Greece, according to European rules, of course, we implement incentives about, for example, CO2 emissions of cars, or pricing tools like the plastic bag that we have removed from the market the last 2 years. But I think about the life cycle approach. We have to implement this in the extended producer responsibility systems. We need a very complicated system, of course, but we need the final cost of each product to reflect the total cost of the product for the entire life cycle of it. Of course, this is not easy. It's a lot complicated, but it's unavoidable, I think so. And finally, I think that we must agree that we need sustainability also as an investment criteria for public money, public investment, but also for banking sector. That means we need criteria at global level about climate neutrality and circularity. It's not possible to invest in procedures without these two criteria. That I focus mainly in a political decision. We need a global universal alliance for the environment, the climate, and the resources that is over economy, trade, and production. And this alliance can also support the human rights and the peace in a unique way. I think all of these are connected. That's why we need at the political high level this agreement, not only environmental level. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I would like to invite Madam Secretary of State from Morocco.
Merci. Je vais présenter mon intervention en arabe. شكرا سيد الرئيس. أعتبر أن هذا النقاش البين دولي مهم جدا لأنه سيمكن من إعطاء جواب جماعي لترجمة الأزمة الإيكولوجية إلى فرصة للتنمية، فرصة لخلق مناصب الشغل، وفرصة أيضا لأن تنقذ الملايين من النساء من الهشاشة ومن الفقر. ويشرفني أن أتقاسم معكم بعض محاور التجربة المغربية التي تعتمد أساساً على مقاربة مندمجة في تدبير تقليص كلفة التدهور البيئي والانتقال إلى الاقتصاد الأخضر، على اعتبار أن المغرب خاض مسلسلاً كبيراً وطويلاً فيما يتعلق بالجانب المؤسساتي والجانب القانوني والجانب أيضاً التميز تجربة على المستوى تجارب بعينها، خاصة فيما يتعلق بالاستراتيجية الوطنية لتبني الطاقات المتجددة. تعزز هذا المسلسل القانوني والمؤسساتي باعتماد الاستراتيجية الوطنية للتنمية المستدامة سنة 2017 التي تعتبر إطاراً ملزماً لأنها اعتمدت من أعلى مؤسسة في الدولة وهي المجلس الوزاري الذي يرأسه جلالة الملك محمد السادس نصره الله. وبالتالي أهم محاور هذه الاستراتيجية الوطنية للتنمية المستدامة هي الانتقال والانخراط إلى الاقتصاد الأخضر، بحيث أن اليوم وستعزز مسار كذلك تطوير الطاقات المتجددة. المغرب اليوم ينتج من الطاقات المتجددة النظيفة 35% من الطاقة من الأصل يعني المائي الريحي وكذلك الكهربائي. المغرب اليوم برمج وهو في إطار التفعيل أن ننتقل من 3 مراكز للتثمين في تدبير النفايات إلى 50 مركز على ربوع المملكة المغربية. المغرب اليوم قدمنا قبل أيام من مجيئنا إلى هنا استراتيجية للتثمين وتقليص النفايات، نريد منها أن نصل إلى 30% من تثمين نفايات 37 مليون طن من النفايات التي ينتجها المغاربة، ونضع 2020 لأن نصل إلى 20% من تثمينها، على أن نصل إلى 60% من تثمينها. وهذا موضوع شراكة بين القطاع الخاص والمجتمع المدني ومجموعة الأبناك وكذلك الحكومة التي تؤطر وتقنن المستوى، وكذلك ملتزمة بأن تؤطر المستوى المؤسساتي والقانوني وكذلك إطار الشراكة. المغرب أيضا سنة 2019 وهذا مشروع مهم جدا اعتمد البرنامج الوطني المندمج لتطهير السائل في العالم القروي، وسنصل سنة 2040 إلى إعادة استعمال المياه العادمة بنسبة مليار متر مكعب من المياه التي سيستعملونها الفلاحين في الوسط القروي، وهذا استثمار فيما يتعلق بالموارد المائية. المغرب اليوم انطلقنا في 3 جهات لمطارح جديدة فيما يتعلق تثمين النفايات البناء، على اعتبار أن هذا كذلك له علاقة بتثمين وإعادة إعطاء حياة جديدة للمنتوج المستهلك. المغرب أيضا في تجربة متميزة على المستوى المؤسساتي، له لجنة توجيه الاستراتيجي تضم الحكومة بكل القطاعات المتدخلة، كل الوزارات المتدخلة والقطاع الخاص والمجتمع المدني هي التي تشتغل وتواكب تنزيل الاقتصاد الأخضر التي تترأسها كتابة الدولة للتنمية المستدامة. أهم من هذا، وهذا ما أريد أن أختم بكلمتي، هو أن هذا التمرين الأممي في فتح نقاش من أجل أن نقدم حلولا وحلا جماعيا لأن نترجم الأزمة إلى حل. أعتقد أن اليوم واجبنا جميعا أن نسرع من تقوية الخبرة، من التمويل، وكذلك من الابتكار في إطار مشروع جماعي، خاصة لمواكبة دول الجنوب، الدول الإفريقية اليوم التي تتدهور بيئتها، والمنتهى هو أن 90% من ساكنة إفريقيا اليوم هي معرضة لآثار التغير المناخي الذي يدهور بشكل كبير المنظومة الطبيعية والمنظومة الإيكولوجية التي هي حاضنة لساكنة جلها من النساء والأطفال الذين هم اليوم حقيقة في وضع لا يحمد عليه فيما يتعلق بآثار وتداعيات تدهور الموارد الطبيعية. شكرا لكم.
Thank you a lot. Now, last but not least, the Minister, His Excellency from Maldives.
Thank you, Moderator. For the Maldives, being a small coral island nation, highly fragmented, for us the environmental sustainability and natural environment is very important. It is critical for us to resource efficiency and waste gaps in each and every stage of the life cycle. In the Maldives, our population is only 440,000 people, and almost 1/3 of the population resides in 5 square kilometer capital Male, which is highly densely populated. In the capital, the daily per capita waste generation is 1.7 kg, whilst in the outer islands it is 0.8 kg. In tourist resorts, it is estimated that every guest night generates 3.5 kg of waste. On average, it is estimated that waste generated in the Maldives will increase by 5% annually. So, our geographical fragmentation presents a unique challenge in terms of waste management. All the biodegradable or organic waste is processed at island level. We have 187 islands people living. All the incinerable waste is taken to waste management centers at regional level, and we cluster in atolls into different regions. So waste management is huge and very expensive exercise for us. As others have expressed, we wish that we have a legal extended producer responsibility so that people who produce this waste can take some responsibility for that. Ultimately, today, for instance, a bottle of water of 1 liter, the water content in it is, say, 1/5 of the real value they are sold in. So the rest of it is the plastic cover it's selling. So at the end of the day, governments like us have to take responsibility for that, recycling it. So the producer is actually not taking any responsibility for it. Environmental sustainability constitutes a key pillar for our government. We are taking measures progressively to phase out single-use plastics as well. We are recycling waste and producing energy from waste as well. 8.5 megawatt of electricity will be produced using around 500 metric tons of waste daily from Mali region. But other regions, we're going to have in the south, 1.5 megawatts produced from Addu city and Formulak city, and we have already started 500 kilowatt of electricity in another zone. The critical point is here, we are doing all what we can do to recycle and generate value from it. But we are left with a huge problem because huge amount of waste is accumulated in outer islands throughout the archipelago. Much of it is actually more than 15 years. Nobody has been able to, no past government has been able to adequately address this because we don't know where we can take this scrap metal and other material. So consumer behavior is very important. Demand for consumers themselves send a strong signal not only to the governments but also to the business sector. We need to continue to engage with the consumers to increase awareness as well as able them to make choices that are more environmentally friendly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all valuable contributions which you have done. We are slowly running out of time, but since you were so patiently sitting the whole, if you have any burning comment on what you have heard, if you can wrap up in 1 minute, of course, you are more than welcome. If you don't have it, I'm not pushing you at all, but if after this debate you have any comment, you're welcome. Anybody?
I might say one thing.
Yes.
Just in regards to integrating life cycle data into the policy decision making, because we need feedback loops, right? So there is a lot of advancement around streamlined or more accessible LCA tools, and we're seeing these become more available to governments to be able to put in place for industry-wide assessment. So certainly we've got some examples in the Netherlands with regards to the dairy industry, having benchmarking so that you can have the carbon footprint of the production of a litre of milk or cheese so that you can have continual improvement. Without data, without the measurement tools that LCA gives us, we have no benchmark to improve upon. And what we really find useful with these tools is they enable people at all different levels to access the complexity of LCA data, because that is one of the limiting factors, is that LCA is complicated. So that does prohibit a lot of the private sector and governments from using it effectively. But the other key thing I should say in regards to integrating LCA into decision making is that people need to have a base understanding of how the data works, but also how to apply it in the across the different sectors, right? So we really need to make it more liberal and accessible, and that starts with basic understanding of how it works and how we can use it in more effective ways.
Thanks, Leila. We have a latecomer, the minister from Samoa, but since we are talking about life cycles, of course, everything is still in our life cycle. So please, the floor for your contribution.
In 1 minute. In 1 minute.
No
My apology. I was one of the first ones that entered this room, and I was sitting at the back. No one was telling me until the US spoke, and I realized that there was a seat for me up here. I'm from Samoa, one of the small island developing states. When we come to forum like this, we come to seek justice. We come to ask our big players and our big countries to take up some responsibility and play their part in reducing climate change, the impact of climate change to us in the Pacific and of course all other small island developing states. There's a lot to do, and we, given our own limited capacity, we are doing what we can in terms of, like my countries with just banned plastic bags January this year. And the Pacific as a whole, we want to promote the idea of a blue Pacific, trying our best to make the Pacific a zero waste continent in terms of what little we can do with what resources we have. So when we come to forum like this, we seek your support, the major players of our one planet, so that we can live together in harmony with nature. Thank you.
Thank you. First, what I would like to say, sincere thank you from my side to everybody of you who contributed to this debate. I think it was fascinating. Thank you. Thank you. I don't see any burning comments from this side.
I have a last one
but,
from the
but,
industry.
But you are limited on 1 minute both. Okay? It was for a second, yes.
Yet?
Yeah. Super.
Okay, thank you first of all for all the contribution here from the governments. I think there is quite a significant dynamic now to collaborate and to work jointly to fight waste. We, as industry, we are interested and we are happy to contribute with our technologies, but also our knowledge on the products we produced. We also develop our own assessment methodologies, which we are happy to provide and make available for the right assessment of our products, and then also to develop concepts to reduce the overall environmental impact.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to extend my thanks for all of your contributions and for your continued work to develop policies that enable a more circular and closed-loop approach to supply chains, and also to thank you for your willingness to dive deeply into the LCA models, because I think that is the key to ensuring that when we make decisions, we're making the right ones, and we're really driving change.
Thank you. Steffi?
Very, very short. I think it was very positive what we heard here, many good intentions and also already actions, so that is very nice, and also in terms of the thinking. What I would like to mention just as what is available, there are a lot of resources also available from the Lifecycle Initiative, from the UN Environment, and I think it is worth to look also into that, because there are a lot of activities and also guidelines to perform
which are already existing, yeah.
Mm.
Okay, thank you. I'm here now to wrap up our discussion. I've had some colleagues which helped me from the backstage preparing some of the conclusions of the valuable debate which they have heard. First, life cycle approaches provide the systemic perspective necessary to focus on key levers of change, address potential trade-offs linked to alternative solutions. Tools, knowledge, capacity are available for countries to improve national resource management strategies with integrated full life cycle approaches and analysis to achieve resource-efficient and low-carbon economies. This is actually from the draft ministerial declaration, so it must hold. Strategic decisions such as institutional procurement and investment boost the transition towards sustainable consumption and production if informed by life cycle approaches. Third, encouraging the sharing of production information and interoperability of life cycle data sets allows better informed decisions. Initiatives such as the Global LCA Data Access Network offer a gateway to enable life cycle-based policies. Life cycle approaches help addressing market distortions and economic signals. Two key enabling conditions for the global application of life cycle approaches are access to data and enhanced capacity to apply life cycle approaches. Digital transformation is an important enabler for the necessary changes connected to LSA and circular economy. We should encourage traceability, transparency to empower our consumers. Special attention should be given to lower-income countries. Their problems are different. Solutions have to be specific. Acknowledging differences, we need to be able to show how life cycle analysis can help them leapfrogging to a better future. We should in particular focus on social aspects of the transition, employment, inclusiveness, and local benefits. Dear friends, change will not appear by waiting for the leadership of others. We have to be leaders on our level of governance, on our level of authority in politics, in business, in academia, in civil society, in making your investment decisions. The real focus should be on cooperation and implementation. Complexity and scale of the challenges we face requires new forms of collaboration and more systemic approaches. World Warning to Humanity, actually in the second notice, this was signed by 15,000 scientists at the end of 2017, actually called, "We require the help of the world community of scientists, natural, social, economic, political. We require the help of the world's business and industrial leaders. We require the help of the world's religious leaders. And we require the help of the world's peoples. We call on all to join us in this task." It is really high time that we understand the urgency for acting. Let me finish with a quote which I have already mentioned one during the UNEA days at the beginning. It is coming from a professor from United States, Guy McPherson, who said, if you think the economy is more important than environment and health, then try holding your breath while you are counting your money. Thank you for being an attentive audience. And I wish you a really safe way home. We have already paid a very high toll. Thank you. Thanks.
Right, can we move forward so that we can start the next session? So if you're going to have a talk, please do it outside. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. You're there. Liz, you're there. There. Right, can people take their places? We're going to try and start as soon as we can.
We do a lot of work for you on.
Yeah. Come on, Jane.
Win back, but I think you probably
Need for one of these. Yes, yes. So sit on one of these comfy chairs. That's why I said to you earlier, if you're okay, or if you want to do a side one because of the dress, it's up to you. Okay, I'm not going to sit there.
Okay. So I should turn it off.
Okay. So can I start?
There's
Sorry?
so many governments.
Well, I mean, that applies.
Were you this morning? I have the Luxembourg Minister of Environment here. She's not supposed to sit on the panel.
No, that's.
So she will intervene from the
yes,
from the seat.
that's
yes,
right.
Yes. So she's here. Yes.
So. Do you want to take a photograph of the question I'm going to ask you?
Hello? No?
You're not on? Should be okay.
Hi. Good morning. Good morning.
Huh?
Right, if people could settle, we're going to try and start the final session of the dialogue. So thank you very much for coming. We're starting a little late. Hopefully we can catch some of that time up as we go. My name's Felix Dodds. I'm at Junk Professor at the University of North Carolina. And we're going to have our third dialogue, as you know, if you've been reading the agenda on innovative, sustainable business development at a time of rapid technology changes. And I have to say that I personally worry about the ability of society to cope with these rapid changes and the impacts they will have on social cohesion, and whether our political institutions are equipped to help facilitate, which is what is going to be a massive change as we approach 2030. But today we're going to look at some of the more positive elements of how we are addressing another massive change that is facing us. As all of us know here, we're living in a rapidly warming, polluted planet that is quite quickly losing its biodiversity. The world continues to use a growing amount of resources to such an extent that we have now surpassed several of the ecological thresholds mapped by science. Pollution-related costs have been estimated at something like $4.6 trillion annually. Climate change is, of course, the great threat multiplier. So the Sustainable Development Goals asked us to think of things in a different way. They asked us to think about addressing the interlinkages between the goals and the targets, because we live in a much more complex world than we did in the 1990s when Agenda 21 was agreed, or the World Summit on Sustainable Development's Johannesburg Plan of Implementation. Here on resource use, we've seen metal ore extraction and metal production increase threefold from 1970 to 2010, driven by industrialization and urbanization of the emerging economies. We've seen resource use is expected to double between 2015 and 2050, with high-income countries currently consuming 10 times more per person than low-income countries. It's one of the most sobering thoughts, but not the only one, that we face in 2019, that 2 out of 3 people still lack access to controlled waste disposal facilities. This generation will not only have to deal with the mess that we are leaving, but will have to deal with the massive social change as technologies start to change the nature of work. There are several conditions that we know are required to stimulate and strengthen a culture of innovation. These include leadership and governance instruments that reward innovative business models and promote the use of greener technologies, but while ensuring that any transition is a just transition. We should stimulate openness and collaboration, education, and continuous capacity building that facilitate this transition to a more knowledge-based society. The heads of state will be meeting in September to review the issues around the delivery of the Sustainable Development Goals, and at least part of that conversation will have to be around issues of means of implementation, issues such as capacity building, tech transfer, and financing. This session will see ministers and high-level officials and expert speakers provide their insights into the key success elements to promote innovation and new technologies which create value for companies, the environment, and most of all, for society. Now, we've asked each of the presenters and all the ministers and high-level officials to keep their comments to about 3 minutes, and I have a colleague who's going to tell me when we get close to that, so I will have an opportunity to perhaps nudge you to that 3 minutes. We're going to have our first presentation from the panel. Priya Mehra, the Director of Sustainability at Victory Farms. Priya joined Victory Farms with over a decade of experience working in development and innovative finance. She was formerly the policy advisor to the UN Secretary General, Ban Ki-moon, on global health and climate change, and COO of Morgan Stanley Institute for Sustainable Investment. Priya, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Felix. Heads of delegation, ministers, esteemed panelists, guests, it's a huge pleasure to be back at the UN. I'm here today, as Felix mentioned, in my capacity at Victory Farms. Victory Farms, we're fish farmers, so we are growing tilapia in a cage and pond system in rural Homa Bay County in Kenya. It's an absolutely gorgeous part of the world. I hope all of you will have a chance to visit at some point, if you haven't already been. And we're growing extremely rapidly. So we're just about 3 years old. You could call us a startup. You could call us a medium-sized business at this point. We produced about 1,000 metric tons of tilapia last year. This year, we're on track to produce 5,000 metric tons of tilapia, and our goal is to get to 10,000 in the next couple of years. We have 250 employees in such a short time, and our model is to sell to low-income neighborhoods in Nairobi. So 75% of our fish is being sold to market women in branches that we've set up in these low-income neighborhoods. Market women come, they purchase our fish, they flavor it and fry it, add value, and then they sell it for a higher margin. And so, you know, we've grown tremendously, but we've also had a pretty cool opportunity, and I think a lot of businesses in Silicon Savannah, which is the nickname for Nairobi, have also embraced. So we saw a need rising from shifting social and economic changes, and we were able to build a successful business on those changes. So a lot of businesses have embraced this. We saw the population increasing. Today we're at 50 million in Kenya. We will be around 100 million by 2050. And already today there are not enough fish in the market. So most of the fish coming into Kenya is coming in from China. It's not produced nor is it transported sustainably. And so we were able to develop this business with the knowledge and the idea of growing fish as sustainably as possible for Kenyans, to make it as accessible, affordable, and to promote food security and nutrition. We have a twin aim. Another major goal for us is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So our hope is that we can grow enough tilapia to get people to eat it very accessibly and affordably as a replacement to beef and pork. Many of you probably know it takes about 8.7 kgs of feed to grow 1 kg of beef. whereas tilapia, it takes only 1.6 kgs of feed to grow 1 kg of tilapia. So we would envision in the long term that we can help people to switch over and we can have a reduction of greenhouse gas emissions with the change of food consumption. And we've built our entire business around the SDGs, so we've aligned to each part of the SDGs, whether that's protecting life below water or empowering our employees. We really firmly believe in meeting the SDGs and doing our part. We've also had a lot of help from the government of Kenya, whether that's through regulation or various support. But there's a lot more that needs to be done, and so I would just leave with my parting thoughts of encouraging the UN and other bodies to think about helping Kenya and other African nations to think about better mapping and spatial planning for resources. So aquaculture industry will grow, whether that's sustainably or not, and we would really love to see it grow sustainably. But we first need to understand what are the resources in Lake Victoria and other bodies of water, and then we can see how are people using them, how is industry using them, what are the needs on the ecological side, and that's the first starting point to protecting the environment.
Thank you very much. Jane, this is Jane Nikango, who's the CEO of the Kenyan National Cleaner Production Center. A network of more than 70 similar centers operate globally. These centers support small and medium-sized enterprise to apply sustainability business practices, innovative business models, new technologies. So I have a question for Jane. Small and medium enterprises are a pillar of the economy in Kenya, as well as of many countries. Are they taking advantage of the new business models of innovative technologies? What is required to ensure that we can fully benefit from these opportunities? Jane.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. As you rightly indicated, I have more than 20 years experience in the circular economy space. Just as